Hello, everyone. This is JD Talosic. Welcome to all of our old friends and our newcomers. This is the Salon for the Creative Gulf Network. I'm JD Talosic, the Director of Cultural Programs at the National Academy of Sciences, also Editor-in-Chief of Leonardo Journal, which I'm glad to talk about either one of those at the end. But just so glad that you're here. Welcome. The agenda is pretty much like it has been for other events. We will start with a provocation by our provocateur, Jody Deming, who Brandon will introduce in a moment. But then we'll have some time for questions, discussion, and then we'll have time to meet people maybe that we haven't met before, or to share new projects or things that you want to share about. This group is always very dynamic and talkative and never disappoints for an exciting hour and a half. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Brandon.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you, and it's nice to see so many faces we haven't seen for a while and new faces. And we're excited today to have Jody speaking with us about her work and research. And so I'll just dive right in and read her bio. Jody Deming is a professor emerita in the School of Oceanography at the University of Washington. She's an ocean scientist who, with her student, explores microbial life in the Arctic Ocean and within its sea ice, building on earlier years of research in the deep sea. At the University of Washington, she has directed the Marine Bioremediation Program, launched the Center for Environmental Genomics, and co-founded the nation's first graduate training program in astrobiology. Internationally, she has led ice-breaking expeditions in the Arctic, including 2 overwintering expeditions, and chaired or participated in numerous Arctic advisory boards. She serves as editor-in-chief of Ocean Science for the nonprofit open access journal Elementia, Science of the Anthropocene, and is a fellow of the American Academy of Microbiology and American Geophysical Union, and member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. She is one of the leaders of the Ocean Memory Project, a collaborative effort between artists, scientists, and other creative practitioners, exploring novel concepts at the rich interface between ocean and memory. Thank you, Jody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm exhausted by my own biography. So is it time for me to start then? Can you see my slides? Yeah, so first let me thank JD and Brandon for inviting me to share this time with you. I wasn't quite sure what to prepare, so I hope I haven't gone too far afield from what you were expecting, but we'll have a discussion afterwards so you can reorient me if you like. I'm part of the Ocean Memory Project, which is a large consortium, and we all have our own views of what ocean memory means. So what I'm talking about today is my personal story, and only part of my personal story. And the part I'm going to emphasize today is not the usual part about how the artistic community can help scientists to convey their information to the public and make people more aware of what's going on or what we think is going on and make changes that way, but rather the reverse. How does the artistic community influence the way science goes forward? And that has been of a great interest to me. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit on that. And I don't know if you've seen this quote from Albert Einstein before, or this document, but it's very influential in my own thinking, that all religions, arts, and sciences are branches from the same tree. All the problems that we face and the issues that we have to resolve We need all the voices involved in making those decisions, how we go forward. It isn't just the artist community or the science community or all the other walks of life that we have as a community of humanity, but we all need to be together to solve our problems. And so something called the National Academy's Keck Futures Initiative established a whole set of conferences uh, over a series of years. And I was invited to participate in the last one that addressed a theme, and it was about the deep blue sea. And it was to bring together scientists and artists. And I had never been to such a conference before, only science conferences. And I was actually a little resistant to go to this one. But the chair twisted my arm. He's a microbial oceanographer like I am. And the focus of the conference was very scientific. You can see these subject matters that we were to discuss. I was in the biodiversity group. And our charge was we were a group of ocean scientists, mostly microbiologists, studying the invisible life in the ocean. So we were a group of scientists and a group of artists, most of whom were on the designer side of art. And our charge was to come up with something new and creative. And boy, we struggled. We sat in a room together and we struggled. And we even had discord and arguments. And it was a little concerning for me because the ocean is something that I have loved my whole life. And here we were arguing over what it had to offer us or what we could get from it. And then an artist asked the question, does the ocean have memory? And that was, for me personally, that was electrifying because I had always, all the research that I've done in the ocean has been about the memory that the ocean holds of various processes and events going on in the ocean in the past and the present and going into the future. But I didn't have a word for it. So ocean memory gave me a word for it. And right away, we played with the idea that the ocean actually is the Earth's brain. These are neurons from the human brain. And so obviously we didn't actually think of the ocean as having synapting neurons, but it was a metaphor that we played with. If you start with a memory agent, the neurons in our brain, we have a neuronal interactive network in our brains. And during the night when we sleep, we process all the information we've brought in, we prune out some of it, we lose some of it, but in the end, we have a whole bunch of retained memories in our brain that we can recall, short term, long term. And so that's the human brain. So how could we think about an ocean brain? Well, if there's a memory agent in the ocean, you could argue that it's the microbe, the invisible microbes everywhere. In the Gulf of Mexico, there are a bazillion invisible microbes at work right now on the problems in the Gulf right now. But if you envision them as an interactive network and you realize that they have a processing, pruning, and loss process, and they end up with recallable memories, that's the ocean brain. That's one metaphor, one way of thinking about it. I found it really useful because in the human brain, if something goes wrong, if plaque develops in these neuronal networks, you develop memory loss and you no longer can recall memories. We are doing the same thing to the ocean. We are introducing pollution and microplastics. Things are going extinct. We are causing the ocean to lose some of the memories that could be super important to us as we try to solve problems that are related to the ocean. And I would argue that everything is related to the ocean. We are an ocean planet. Okay, but that was just in the beginning when we played around with metaphors for what ocean memory might mean. But ocean memory means something different to every person that thinks about it. And these are just a couple of examples here. And I can't see my full screen. Let's see, yeah. Rob Knight is a molecular biologist. So he thought about DNA and patterns that record ocean memories that way. to move this, sorry. Chris Lee is an artist. She weaves materials, and she wondered what forms memory could take in the ocean. Melody Jew is an English professor, and she wondered how the ocean holds all of its trauma, not only its trauma, but the traumas that we have experienced that we dump in the ocean. Rebecca, who is actually on the screen with us today, she was thinking about microbes as a network of memory agents. So she and I were in sync. We were already influencing each other. But I'm going to come back to Rebecca's work because just notice the geometric patterns in how she thinks here and paints and draws. I'll come back to that. But the point is that if you think about ocean and memory together, you can come up with any number of ways to think about it. So a quick history of the project before I delve into my personal story a little bit more. I don't need to go through all this, but I wanted to emphasize that we really got launched in about 2019. So we had a cruise in the Salish Sea in 2019 with artists and scientists on board the vessel devoted to exploring this interface between ocean and memory. And then the pandemic hit. And the whole purpose of our group was to gather in person and experience things in person. So the odds were against us, but I would argue that we've been very successful. We learned the virtual world, and then as soon as we could, we started engaging again in person. And we have seed projects, we call them, where artists and scientists who get together at one of our gatherings find a connection, and they get a little bit of funding to go off and develop that project. A lot of this is still going on, even though the grant has ended, and we're reinventing ourselves for the future. Okay, our first meeting was at Friday Harbor, which is in the San Juan Islands in Puget Sound, where I am today. And this was the room that we entered where we were going to meet. This was our first meeting of scientists and artists. And by the way, when I say artist, I don't just mean a painter, I also mean a musician or anyone of a creative practice that is not science. And actually, I thought this was a pretty cool room. I love the red chair standing out. I love Moby Dick hanging from the ceiling that the graduate students made. But no, this was not the way we were going to work. This was the way we were going to work. We were going to organize always in a circle so that the hierarchy of the experience is dissipated, removed, so that everyone's voice is equally heard. And we learned this from Monique Verden, who is part of the Gulf Consortium there. She taught us how to use this as a story circle to share in a very respectful sort of way all the voices that could be brought into the room. It turned out to be very powerful, and we don't meet today in any other way. We always meet in a circle. We also learned the value of sticky notes and putting ideas quickly on a piece of paper and organizing them over time and seeing where that could take you. I'm going quickly now here. I'm just trying to give you a feeling for how the community interacted. We also learned the value of making things with your hands together. This stimulates creativity in a way that is different than being on screen or reading a book or whatever. And what you're looking at here is the entire depiction of the history of planet Earth and the origin of the Earth here and the development of life all across here. The whole history of the ocean is right here in this room, created in 30 minutes. It was a lot of fun. We also went to sea together. We had people dipping their hands into mud, and I'm sure you can relate to mud in the Gulf, that this mud contains literally billions of microbial memory agents that are holding the genetic memory of what is possible to do, what is possible to break down, what pollutant to break down, what cycle to go through to help a community, a natural community persist. And we had artists on board actively painting. This is Rebecca at work at sea. Okay, so that was a very rushed view of the Ocean Memory Project without giving you any of the projects that we've completed that are going on. But since I don't want to take up a whole lot of time here. I was asked to write a chapter on my own experiences with the Ocean Memory Project, and I entitled it Unimagined Perspectives. And it's about how this community and the non-scientists in the community have changed the way I think about the science I'm doing. And my pitch is that, well, I'll get to my pitch at the end, okay. I had never published in Leonardo before or in any art-related journal before. So this was an exciting new way forward for me. And in the paper, I start by saying what's important about the ocean. So the ocean, we live on land. We have to breathe air. We're landlocked, but the ocean defines our planet, and the ocean defines what happens on our land. The ocean defines Earth, and the ocean is 4 billion years old. Life originated in it, evolved in it. Everything that happens on the planet today is because of the ocean. Our weather, our ability to breathe oxygen, everything tracks to the ocean. Memory, I would argue, is a defining feature of life on Earth, and not just humans with brains, or your pets that have brains and remember things you do for them, or the plants in your garden that remember the weather patterns and prepare for the next season with their seeding process, but all the way down to the invisible microbes in the ocean that you can't even see, that just have a genome to them. They don't have any tentacles or arms or anything. But in their genomes, they encode memory. And this is pretty well established in the scientific literature. So memory is a defining feature of life on Earth. And then when you put these two words together, that's the interface that is so rich. If you start thinking about different ways that the ocean can hold memory, uh, and not just in organisms, but in whole systems. For example, if you have a cold front move in, that cold atmosphere influences the temperature of the surface ocean. Or in today's world, I should say, if you have a warm front move in or a hurricane move in, it changes the temperature of the surface ocean. And that ocean remembers that temperature, and the water masses move according to that temperature, and it changes where the world's up in the future. That's the difference between history and memory. Memory has to impact the future. History is what happened in the past, but memory takes history and advances how we survive better in the future. Uh, so if we could, all of us, all of humanity, understand that the ocean carries so much memory and learn from it, this might be a way for us to develop more respect for the ocean, to not fear the ocean, but love the ocean for all the ways in which it sustains us. Okay, so in my personal story, I brought forward 3 vignettes, which I'll just walk you through quickly. The memorialization of blackness in the ocean's memory of the coronavirus, and the memory of the frozen surface ocean. So in the case of the first vignette, the Ocean Memory Project asked 2 of us, Kathy Foley-Meyer, I think I saw Kathy join, I think she might be on the screen. Hi, Kathy, if you are, I can't see you. I didn't know Kathy, Kathy didn't know me. We were asked to give a seminar together to see what we would come up with. Kathy at the time was earning her PhD in the visual arts at UC Irvine, if I've got that correct, Kathy. And oh boy, I didn't know what we were going to have in common to put together. But oh, did we have a lot in common. And what our commonality started with the Atlantic Ocean. And Kathy's dissertation was on the Middle Passage and the lost ancestry in the ocean. not the slaves that actually arrived and colonized and made us who we are today in the new America, but those who didn't get there, those who were lost at sea. And she educated me about the Middle Passage and introduced me to the site, slavevoyages.org, which is a fabulous site if you want to get educated about this. And it's very oceanographic as I'm looking at this. And it triggered me to think, oh, the first 20 years of my career, I worked in the Atlantic Ocean. I had my own map of the Atlantic Ocean in my office with the different expeditions I'd had over the time. And because I was talking with Kathy and interacting with Kathy, I took a totally new look at this. Like, wow, I was on the Middle Passage route for 20 years. Not the 400 years of the slave trade, but for 20 years I was working this same route. So I overlaid my expeditions on the Middle Passage route, on the trade, realized that I might have something to offer about this story because my whole research effort was what happens to organic matter at the surface of the ocean when it descends into the deep sea. I had never thought about a human body descending to the deep sea. But once I got past the horror of that to think about the fate of this organic material, this wonderful thing emerged, at least in my head. I hope it was wonderful for Kathy, that the elements of the lost ancestry are still in the ocean today, 400 years later. They are still circulating in the Atlantic Ocean. The ocean is holding the memory, is memorializing what happened there. And so we created together this image that appears in the publication, where the background is a painting that Kathy did, which I think beautifully captures the horrific nature of what happened, but for me personally, in a very beautiful sort of way, in recognizing how the ocean is holding this for us and in a positive way for us. The second vignette was during the pandemic, and we were working totally virtually. A couple of us were in the hospital. It was a very interesting time, as I'm sure everybody can relate to. But we wrote a paper together that appeared in Scientific American. And we argued that we'd been looking in the wrong place for a deeper understanding of the coronavirus. And some of the scientists involved looked into the lineage of coronavirus and discovered or realized that it originated, the lineage, not the COVID virus itself, but its lineage originated in the ocean millennia ago. And in the ocean, it was jumping from one invertebrate to the next. So if we had been thinking about this from the oceanic perspective, we would have been prepared to realize that the coronavirus could easily jump from a bat to a human, or however it actually happened. We were 6 scientists and 6 artists. It took us months to work together and pull together the words that we could agree upon. And it was a fascinating exercise that brought us together in a way that no other exercise really could have, I think. Well, I suppose there are many exercises that could have brought us together and has brought us together, but this one was kind of special. Well, when scientists look at a drop of ocean water, we concentrate it onto a filter, we stain it, and we look at it microscopically, and we see this star universe, but it's really microbes. These larger shapes are the phytoplankton that fix CO2 and are the primary producers in the world that produce the oxygen that we breathe. These next smallest things are the bacteria that live in the ocean that I've been suggesting might be memory agents. They've been on the planet in the ocean for almost 4 billion years too. But the very small things in here are viruses that infect the bacteria and the phytoplankton. Well, this is the way a scientist looks at it. because this is the method that we have for looking at it. But this is not the way it looks in the ocean. This is a concentrated way for us to see it. So what I was stimulated to do to change my thinking, and it's now in all my teaching, as is the work with Kathy Foley-Meyer, it's in all my teaching, that it's more like this. And this is an artistic rendition that Rebecca worked with me on, where the microbes are more distant from each other. And here's a microbe that has been infected by a virus, and it's reproduced the virus, and all those little red dots are the viruses diffusing out. So if you're a bacterium over here with no red dot in there, you're safe from this virus infection here. If you're too close to this infective site, you're going to get it. And there's everything in between. So the point is that the ocean gives us an example of social distancing to protect against viral infection. It's a way of, it changed my way of thinking and talking about how microbes and viruses interact in the ocean. But I think it also links to, we're not the only ones that get viral infections, and we could learn from other viral infections. Okay, the third vignette is a little more about my own work in the Arctic Ocean, the last part of my career. If you go to sea on an icebreaker, there are times in the season of ice formation where you can see the patterns of the ice as it's forming here. They're very geometric. It's a pattern that we call fractal, and it goes across scales. So this is the kilometer scale. This is a satellite image on the left here looking down on the ice, and there's certain patterns in there. If you zoom into the meter scale, there are similar patterns. If you go to the centimeter scale, even similar patterns, and down to the millimeter scale. Now, you may not visually recognize these as being similar, but I promise you, if you measure the perimeter of all these different spaces and you do some mathematical stuff, they are very, very similar. Very similar fractal geometries. Well, this started me thinking millimeters is huge if you're a micrometer sized bacterium in the ocean. So what if we go even smaller here? And I had already gone smaller. I had gone to the micrometer scale. This is peering inside of sea ice with a microscope to see these are diatoms or phytoplankton, if you will, sea ice algae that are living inside a fractal space. It's not a nice round space. It has a fractal geometry to it. Well, all of this time, I'm working with the Ocean Memory Project, and I'm being influenced by the artists, and Rebecca in particular, because recall that her work is very geometric and includes a lot of fractal geometry. So I started thinking, okay, what if we go even smaller down to the nanometer scale? Is DNA fractal? And yes, it is, I discover, I hadn't realized that it takes fractal forms. It's not in a different form, but in a fractal form. And so my graduate student right now, who's about to defend his thesis, has been exploring this aspect of memory encoded in fractal DNA. And Rebecca and I put together this picture. This is very representative of the type of work that she does, but here we're looking at the background is intended to be the whole Arctic Ocean, and the dark shapes are the satellite image looking down on it. And this is a blow up if you go into the interior of the ice. And we didn't get all the way through, but the idea is that there's a spatial scale of similarity. So even if you've spent your life like I have thinking about the invisible life forms that we can't even see, you can blow them back up and they're very familiar. The opposite is true. You can take our human consortia and reduce them down and find similarities too. Okay. I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to make you read all this. But my point is not to argue that scientists should do things differently. We still have the scientific method. We still need to vet each other, but open our minds and listen to all the voices that are available to influence the science we do. Maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe we're not helping society the way we really could if we listen to all the voices. So my end message is that if we listen to all the different voices involved, microbes, community members, stakeholders, you name it, if we listen to all the different voices, that's a form of respect, and that will get us hugely forward in solving our problems. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I wonder if you would mind stop sharing on your screen. Grable, thanks. I'm always speechless. Jody has inspired so much of the way I think, and just the way that I live and the way that I move through this space. And I'm so appreciative to you, Jody, for being here and sharing this with everyone. It's incredible, inspiring. So I do want to open this up to discussion. Brandon, jump in if you have thoughts that you want to reflect on.
Sure. I loved when you were talking about mud. Mud, billions of microbial agents of memory. That's fantastic. We had an artist visiting us last year from Africa who's an indigo expert, but he also works with other natural materials, and he gathers deep mud from the Niger Delta, and he dyes tapestry with it, and it creates this beautiful black dye. And the idea is that it's a lot more sustainable to use the black dye this way because it's more natural than the toxic one that's in most clothing that we find in the US. But he was also talking about how by diving down, it was part of the history, or the layers and layers of the people and generations, the plants, the animals, the water itself, that had then ended up on this fabric that you yourself are carrying. So it became like a you're carrying them. I guess now I'm thinking of it as memory instead of history.
Yep.
But that's really poetic. You were saying before how you didn't feel like some of the things you were saying might be poetic, but it's a very beautiful poetic thought to look at mud in a different way. So that means we're really rich with memory here in Louisiana.
You are so rich with memory. And those layers of microbes in the mud in Louisiana, they are recording everything, and they are responding too. I mean, I did some work in the Gulf just before the Deepwater Horizon spill. I'm actually from Southeast Texas. Um, And one of the things that is most impressive to me about the Gulf's reaction to that disaster is that there were microbial memory agents in the mud and in the water already, that in the past had already seen oil and gas come into the Gulf, because it comes in naturally, but it comes in naturally at very dispersed areas. It doesn't come in one fell swoop in a horrible sort of way. But those microbes, they carry the genetic memory of how to process that oil and gas, how to recycle it, how to turn it into something less toxic. And they came right into work. They bloomed right in response to that. And they're slower in the sediments, they're slower in the muds in their response. So we don't appreciate them as much because we want things to go faster, to solve problems faster for us, because we're moving so fast and making problems. But those microbes are able to help if we can give them a chance. They carry the memory to help. And sorry, one more thing about the dye issue. That's he's probably using pyrite, which is a black chemical that forms when the mud goes anaerobic, and that's a beautiful use of that mineral. That's very cool.
I'll put his website in the chat here in a second. I'll Google it up. But
I also, since you mentioned the Indigo Project, Brandon, I put a link to the article about the art or the art science exhibit that was in San Diego as part of the Getty PST. That, and if you can put the other article, I've also tried to, as Jody was talking, to put links to websites. Kathy and Rebecca's are in the chat as well. So, any other thoughts, reflections, questions, hopes, dreams, aspirations?
Yes,
Cindy.
hello. Hi, my name is Christy Runhill, and I know that the presenter mentioned that the artist that she worked with around the Middle Passage was also on this call. I was just interested in hearing a little bit about, so just hearing from her about the experience and the conversation around the folks who did not make the Middle Passage. I know myself, I paint and I do multimedia work, but when I'm in my studio, I light a white candle before I do anything in my studio, and that's in homage to all of the captured and enslaved Black folks who did not make it across the Middle Passage. So it's something that I think about pretty much every day. So I just wanted to hear from that artist, to hear her perspective around the experience and what she thought about the outcome of what was shared.
I I apologize in advance for how I sound because I'm grappling with a respiratory infection. So I'm Kathy Foley-Meyer, and nice to meet you, Christy. Um, let's see. I'd actually been making work about uh, our ancestors that did not survive the Middle Passage before I joined the Ocean Memory Project and before I started my graduate program in visual studies. But I didn't have a name for it. I had come across slavevoyages.org when it was actually still in CD form. I'd ordered the CDs when Slave Voyages was with Emory University. They were first released in CD form, and I'd ordered them, but I hadn't done anything with it. And then one day I was Googling around and I saw the website and I was like, okay, cool. Now it's online. Now I don't even have to use the CDs. So I started looking at the voyages and just seeing, there's detailed information there. They have the name of the ship, the name of the captain, the name of the company that owned it, the dates of departure, the dates of arrival on the continent, and the numbers, the amount of human cargo embarked and disembarked. And I was really struck by the number of human cargo that, were lost during the course of the voyage. And it became, it was a sort of a traumatizing thought to try to total them, and almost too much. So I selected 12 voyages, voyages that for the most part, were went back and forth from the east coast of the United States, excuse me, which is where I am from, and it's a region that is not normally associated with the slave trade. When I was growing up in New Jersey, it was taught to me in school that we did not actually have slavery in New Jersey or the surrounding regions, and that, the slave trade happened in the South. And therefore we were, sort of exempt. But obviously that's not true. But anyway, I made a piece called 12 Voyages. I selected 12 voyages from the database. I did 12 abstract paintings, and then I laid them out against a black background to represent a sail, and then I affixed 2 finials at the top and the bottom. And I took that piece with me, sorry, to Japan because I was part of a group of artists, uh, American artists and Japanese artists that had been showing their work, that show their work together. So when I took the piece to Japan, it really resonated there because they are definitely in touch with their ancestors in a like a really direct way. Not that in America we're not, but it's just a different sort of relationship. So when I came back and showed the piece in the US, it was actually purchased because the person who purchased it stood there and was sort of overwhelmed in the same way that I was. So that kind of, but I didn't really have a word for it as being ocean memory. And then years later, when I started my uh, PhD program, I read a book by Christina Sharp called In the Wake on Blackness and Being, where she talks about the residence time presence of Black bodies in the ocean and how, because our bodies are mostly water and salt, we have a residence time presence of salt has a residence time presence of up to 260 million years. So I use that as a lens to talk about um, uh, Black temporality. So, and then when I presented with Jody, it was funny. I remember our first meeting because I was really like, oh my God, what are we going to talk about? and and then she told me we started talking about trips to Africa, and I started telling her about my first trip to Africa, to Ghana, to a Dutch slave trading fort in Senya Baraku, and just passing, looking at the doors of no return, and the and seeing and how that sort of I don't know. It's I always think of Black people as kind of trailing time through our fingers, and sometimes we get sort of snapped back. Something from the past will come and sort of pull us in, and that's kind of how I felt when I looked at the door of no return. But then she started talking about her trips to Africa, and I realized that we actually had a lot in, of area, and we could have a significant exchange about it, and we did, and it still influences the work I make. I'm still making watercolors. I think of the African presence in the ocean as an articulation of the human. So I'm working on a series right now called The Black Body as Language. I've been working on it since I was in graduate school. So it's starting to take different forms. But anyway, I'll stop talking because I'm running out of voice. Hmm.
Kathy, I'm sorry about your voice. I know that somewhere online, and I was looking for it, somewhere online there is a recording of the two talks that you and Jody did. If
Yeah.
you had that link, that would be really great to put in the chat. And I apologize for not being able to find it. It's really what Jody had kind of spoken about that briefly in her talk, but hearing the two talks back to back is really a powerful thing to listen to.
I'm not adept at doing that kind of thing quickly while I'm also on screen. So I don't know, Kathy, if you're
Yes, ma'am.
better at it than I am to get it in the chat. I
If you
haven't
can, I
looked
can
at that
find it and
link in
send
a
it later.
while.
Mhm. Carla, was that a hand up that you
Yeah, I
were
just
wanting
did
to
wanna-
speak?
Yeah, well, it's very exciting to hear you speak, Jody. Thank you. What I was thinking about, which I've thought about since I was a little girl, is whales, because we're pretty sure that they have culture and memory and language. But I grew up in the Keys, and we were very close to the people at Miami Seaquarium, which closed a month ago. And they had Lolita and Hugo, which were abducted from their families in Puget Sound. And those Southern residents, you probably know because you live there, they avoided the cove where they were culled or harvested, whatever you want to call it, until like 2 years ago. Those Southern residents never went back. And it's even recorded the day they went back because they're the most watched whales in the world. and probably everyone here knows that the orca is the most valuable captive animal that you can have for ticket sales in any facility on Earth. Doesn't matter, zoo, aquarium, whatever. But I met Hugo and Lolita when I was 5 years old, and she died. We're the same age. They know where her parents were, her mother. It's just fascinating to me that that part of their social system, but also when you read about like the industrial whaling, the numbers that were taken so readily, they think that as the whale populations increase, like as the Gulf of Mexico society increases, they're not sure how much memory they're able to retain to know when this environment changes, we used to go here. When this environment changes, we would go here. We're out of fish here, we know to go there. And then also, as these whales perish, we know that they are seeding communities in the deep ocean. So anyway, that memory of the ocean having of whales and how that dictates the ecosystem is one part of memory, but then their memory of how they navigate all these different depths and zones of the ocean. I don't know, it always just, I just can never, since age 5, never stop thinking about the memories of the whales. And I know that, you know, a lot of people call me a whale hugger. I don't really care. I came by it very honestly. I grew up next to Flipper Sea School with Milton Santini, who figured out how to catch dolphins. But like that memory of those animals is tremendous. And when Lolita died, like I was crying that evening, and Chris was like, "Why are you so upset?" I said, "I always dreamed that somehow maybe she would get to go home because they know exactly where her family is and she remembers them." It's not as well, it just depends how you equate humans and animals, but that memory, if there were you know, I'm always thinking, how could we describe this memory of like the ecosystem memory and the memories of each being is just, it's profound to think about what they would know.
It is totally profound. And thank you for sharing that personal connection to the whales. I think that's really beautiful, actually. When I first offered a course on ocean memory, it was a science course. And I brought art into it. I brought Kathy's work into it. I brought Rebecca's work into it. But I had to explore, and I was very excited to do this, what the science literature had to say about memory systems in the ocean. And one of the first ones I came across was the whale story. And there is a story about a 10-year memory. And I'm sorry, I forget which whale it was, not the orcas, but one of the great whales that migrates thousands of miles in the ocean from Southern California up into the Arctic. And they have at least a 10-year memory. They go to the same place to feed every year because they know that's where they're going to find the food they need. These are, I think, a baleen whale that's feeding on the sediments, the great whales that are feeding on the bottom of the ocean. And so they know where to go, where the ecosystem is rich and a lot of material has descended to the seafloor and they can get everything they need. And the trauma that's happening now with climate change is that where the Arctic Ocean is changing rapidly now, 4 times faster than any place else on the ocean. We're losing the sea ice, the ecosystems are changing, and the whales are confused because when they go back to their same place, it's not quite as rich as it used to be. And so there's a transition that's going to be happening here where the whales are using their memory, but they're going to have to adjust because the environment, the ecosystem is changing. But the fact that they have this extraordinary memory is pretty amazing.
Cindy, you want to jump in there with a comment?
got so many things. Well, thank you for sharing so many things I found fascinating. I'm an artist, but my work is very research based. And I look at regeneration, holism, and systems theory. And I recently, and I think at our last talk, I mentioned this book, Eat, Poop, Die, which sounds like a funny title, but it's one of the most fascinating books. And how it relates to what you're talking about is so those microorganisms that we're thinking about as holding memory, the whales, their eating and waste habits move that memory from the bottom of the ocean to the top. And then those microbes, when they're at the top of the ocean, would get taken up into the clouds, right? And then when there's not heat domes everywhere, that weather and those clouds move across the planet and rain down in different parts of the country. And so that memory goes from the ocean through the whale to the land. And I believe, I haven't seen anyone studying this, but that there's relationships between like the grasslands and the forest, because they're finding microbes from like the coastal prairie in the California forest. And so how else does that happen? And so that's like memory that gets I don't know. I just found that whole thing super fascinating when you think about that. And then when it gets in the land and the continents, or it was when we had ruminants migrating north and south, then those memories were being taken. Oh, it's just an unbelievable system when you start looking at everything and how they work together.
Oh, we have a gorgeous Earth system that's so
We have a
connected.
gorgeous Earth
Everything is
system.
so connected. It is gorgeous. I love the idea of translocated memory. The sharing of
sharing.
the sharing of memory. We do that in humanity. We have cultural memories that we share amongst cultures, and if you study distinct human cultures, many have similar memories. If you, it's remarkable how we develop similar memories of the same. I'm not finding the right words here, but there is a lot of shared memory on this planet. Yes.
I just wanted to add that I loved hearing about, the whale migration and all these sort of different scales and sort of layers of memory. And something I think that has made this Ocean Memory Project really special has been a lot of our in-person meetings were sort of talking about kind of mapping these different kind of scales, ecosystem memory versus like a smaller scale type of memory, different geologic time scales, all kind of mapped on top of one another in this ocean space. And so it's so ripe for, different modes of thinking about it and being creative. And so I think for me as a non-scientist and being part of the project, I think the most salient example was what Jody was talking about. Like when I was first trying to wrap my head around this idea of memory in the ocean, was this idea of these microbes in the Gulf of Mexico responding to this perturbation of the oil spill. And I learned this term rare biosphere, which is, I think, the term for these outlying microbes that they call them the like firemen of the sea, I guess, that they kind of come out when there's some sort of unusual situation. But it's just amazing to me. And Jody, it's just been such an honor to work with you and to learn from you. And I just wanted to say thank you. So. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the other really amazing example. Somebody mentioned Jody being poetic. She is absolutely a poet. The very, very first meeting in 2017, she was talking about that circle in the conference room or in that space. Jody told the story of microbes coming out of sea ice, Arctic, from the Arctic. And so I'm not going to say it as poetically as she did, but it was such an amazing story of geologic time and of memory. Essentially, there are microbes that are living in sea ice. You know, there's a whole system, these channels, these living channels of brine that harbor microbial life. And some of these microbes could be dormant for, am I wrong, Jody, millions of years? Is that a true statement, or maybe less than that?
I don't know where you're going with that. but
Okay, well, anyway.
Yeah.
So they can be dormant for a long time. Then through seasonal melting, they can be reintroduced into the ocean. And through kind of the circulation of the ocean, end up in this deep sea sediment that we've been talking about, this mud, you know. And then they can be living in this mud for potentially millions of years before they might be reintroduced into the ocean through some sort of hydrothermal event. And so, yeah, it's sort of talking about what Cindy's talking about, this idea of this constant kind of this circulation and this movement of microbes. I mean, that's on a slower time scale than what you're talking about, but it's just fascinating, the different layers. So it's been just something that has completely changed, you know, my creative practice, being part of this ocean memory project and thinking about the ocean through this lens, you know, and thinking about all the systems in the ocean through this lens. So thanks, Jody. Thanks.
I think what Rebecca's capturing is the circulation that goes on in the ocean and with the atmosphere, as Cindy was also saying. And there is a circulation. And Fred, you can probably tell where I'm going with this, but at our most recent gathering, we began to understand that the circulation that goes on in the ocean has a drumbeat to it that is, as Rebecca said, it's a long time scale of ocean water descending below the ocean into the rocks below the ocean, but coming back up. It takes thousands and thousands, if not thousands of years for this grand circulation, but it's regular. It's like the heartbeat of the ocean. And where we started talking about, thinking about the ocean memory as the ocean being the brain of Earth, now we've moved to the ocean being the heart of the Earth, and that there are rhythms and beats that signal the heart of the Earth is the ocean. It's this connectivity everywhere that, and the circulation of memory agents or blood, however you want to think about it, that represents a heartbeat.
Jody, I want to underscore, telling that story. Go back to one of the very first comments you made as you were starting to talk. You were talking about, you know, sort of the relationship between artists and scientists is that of science communication. That you're interested in how we can inform each other and think differently. And what, you know, your talk was wonderful, but it's also wonderful to have Kathy and Rebecca and Fred, who have been a part of that. What you just described, when Fred brought, and Fred's spoken in this group before, and we developed this idea of, you know, the beating heart, you know, the science and mysticism of health, and which is an area that he's very actively working in. But he brought that to the Ocean Memory Project at Friday Harbor Lab the last time that we convened, and I think we even have a conversation of a recording of the conversation between John and Fred, and you could just see how they were influencing each other. It was like a very elegant ping pong game or tennis game where these ideals were just kind of going back, and you could see how they were both excited. You could just see the twinkle in their eyes. They were excited about discovering something new. And I think that's really what, at least for me, what you were talking about at the beginning of how this is not just about science communication, but how we can come together. And also, I think Fred would agree that it's about, you know, sort of the ideal of community. I mean, the Ocean Memory Project is a community, just like we, you know, when we find different types of communities, and the way that we're able to come together within the sort of art and science realm. You know, people, you know, that stereotypically you don't think would be talking to each other are actually talking and finding, and then that's a form of health. That's that's building a healthy environment, a healthy community on different levels. And Fred, don't think you're going to keep your microphone off for very long. You're going to say something. I know it. Anyone else? Okay, Fred.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the exciting thing is there's so much to discover, and there's so much to learn, and there's so much to discover, and there's so many opportunities for us to sort of weave from our lens to weave together a story, to weave together a level of understanding, to weave or to create a feeling, a felt sense around this around the magnificent ocean. You know, I remember after one of the first meetings that I had with with the Gulf group, you know, the next time that I went out to the Gulf of Mexico, I live here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I looked at it in a totally different way. The conversations that I've had with Kathy, you know, the deepening and the understanding of, you know, that living, that the living essence of those who didn't complete the passage, but are now a part of a history and a part of an essence that in many ways is painfully undescribable, while at the same time as an artist or as a, you know, a melodic narrator to try to give voice to that. I mean, it's just, you know, like Rebecca saying that, you know, it's changed, you know, your approach as an artist. For me, I think it has in many ways expanded or really deepened my understanding of some of the conversations that I had with elder teachers from West Africa, who guided me into understanding the importance of certain tools of melodic narrative and the rhythm of the drum and how to practically apply or practically be a part of that to amplify this amazing story that involves visual arts and science. You know, it's like to and again, Jody and John, I mean, John's lyrics, you know, and Jody, the way that you explain the ocean. You said something, and I've said this many times, you said, without the ocean, there would be no us, you know, and that's a really powerful thing. And then when we were at the last group gathering, you know, this whole concept that every second breath, you know, comes from, I mean, it just expands our opportunity to, in creative ways, articulate the relativity and the importance, the heartbeat, the essence of the ocean, that it's not whether you live close to it or not, you know. And then Cindy now talking about, you know, it goes up into the ethers, it goes up into the mist, and it travels and it lands. I mean, you know, if anyone has any problem with the concept of connectedness, that we're all connected, I mean, that's absolutely the truth. And so we get to, in creative ways, create a felt sense that helps us to more deeply understand, while at the same time celebrate, you know, how closely connected we are. And, you know, and Brandon, the work that you're doing. And we really need to share this with children, with young people. It's so important for these new generations coming along to realize this, you know. So, I mean, it's just a real honor to be involved, and pretty humbling when you take a look at, woo, I didn't know that, but you know, let me take that and run with it in a way so that others can be informed. So yeah, it's quite an honor to be involved in the conversation.
I just want to mention, in case for those of you who don't know Fred, Fred came to this group through the Gulf Research Program, the workshop that we had in Tampa back in the early part of 2024, and it seems like that's so recent, but I can't remember my life before I met Fred. But you'll recall how he transformed the conversation in the conference room by continuing that tradition of West African tradition of storyteller, and kind of bringing us together as a community in that room through voice and narrative and song. Anyone else? Wonderful conversation. Thank you. I do want to invite, we're a little bit after 2 o'clock now. I do want to invite us to kind of start, if you're new to the group, and would like to introduce yourself, we'd love to hear from you. If you have new projects that you want to share, and also continue to have this discussion with Jody. Ask questions, make comments, share insight. I just want to start making space for other people who might want to introduce themselves.
I just had one more quick thought, JD.
Mhm.
But this idea of memory, it can put intelligence on high alert because we think we're smart, but we were gifted with so many memories just by the nature of our DNA. So like the ocean has memory. In the book Naming Nature, they talk about the ability, just to tie back to what Fred said, every culture that's been studied, every child from 0 to 4 years old has the innate ability to learn up to or more 600 individual names of birds, plants, animals. It's like we're born and we want to name everything in nature. And if you lose this ability, you can't tell the difference between man-made objects and nature-made objects, and you die from this lack of knowledge. And I don't know how that relates to the ocean, but if our bodies have salt water in them that's the same as the ocean, you know, I always like to think of every gift that I ever got was from the ocean, especially this one of obsession of knowing the name of everything. But all people are born with it, and it's just every culture that's been studied has that. And it can be very helpful to us as practitioners trying to teach people that we're just born to learn about nature.
Thank you, Carol.
I think this emphasizes Fred's point that we need to bring things to the children level. As children learn, and while children are learning, their parents learn too. So it's there's a connectivity there, a learning connectivity. We start young.
Great. Cindy, it looks like you have your hand up.
I do. I want to share some exciting stuff. And it kind of relates to everything we're talking, sharing, making children knowledgeable of this. In 2020, I started a living sculpture at the Lawndale Art Center, putting in a lot of pollinator plants. And I met children and families there who had never seen a butterfly. Saw their first butterfly there in my installation. That was really unsettling for me. And so I had this, I mean, it's propagating a vine cost you, nothing, that it's such an easy thing to fix. However, it's not easy to get into doing work with public schools or any school in general, but an opportunity came about, and I was invited to install at a pre-K at Clemente Martinez Elementary School here in Houston, passion vines, and I was going to do one by their gate, and I ended up doing 90. So the idea is that then the next year, when all these vines are mature, that the same people will take cuttings and propagate them and give them to the next school, so that we never have a pre-K kid go to school without seeing a butterfly first when they walk through the gate. And so I was really excited to have to kick that off, but I'm doing, and then I did my second living sculpture in a private residence, and they're really letting me let nature find its own way. And I had planted a plant, a butter daisy that can be quite aggressive. In my mind, that's high achieving in every area that's good for the planet. But at the same time, it's like taking over everything. And I'm like, oh, do I trust nature, or should I cut this back and give these other plants a chance, And I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust nature. Let's just see if it knows better. Last week, I had in an area that has no butterflies, I had in that living sculpture hundreds and hundreds of monarchs, not another butterfly within miles. So I let that plant do its thing, even though everything that society tells me about aggressive plants I didn't listen to. So anyway, that was exciting to me, and I just wanted to share that people are
Lovely.
starting to talk to the kids.
So Cindy, thank you. I do want to call out a couple of people, not to jump in front of me, but Brandon had his annual festival down in Louisiana, and I want to report on that. And I also know that there's a new person here, Sam. I know you're new because I just got the email from you to add you within the past couple of days, and I'm anxious to hear about what a paper cutter and paper artist does in Louisiana. So, Brandon, do you want to tell us a little bit about the festival?
Sure. So yeah, we just had our annual Halloween Art and Nature Festival, and it was great. It was it hadn't rained in like a month, so of course it rained like crazy in the morning. But we had a great attendance, and we had I think this is probably each year it just gets a little bit larger. I think this year there were 54 individual artists, scientists, universities, organizations, all there doing something hands-on and experiential and free. That's a big part of what we try to do, is make sure that it's accessible for everyone. And we even had Rachel Maori from California, who was part of the NACFE program. She came in to show some of her work. And then Sasha was there performing in a couple of different capacities for NOAA, but also performing rock music at night as part of an aerial performance. Timothy was there making these great, Timothy Davidson was there making these great terrariums, which apparently were quite a hit with kids that have been coming this week. They remember making the terrariums. We had the French consulate here this week with French immersion kids from throughout the parish, and they remember you, and they were telling me about the jars with moss they made. So it was a great experience, and I hope next year you all will come and all participate. Sam was a part.
Sam and Timothy. Sam, I wonder if we could hear from you, and then Timothy, maybe you could say a few things. Sorry to call you out, Sam. I just I saw you there, and I remembered your bio.
All right, hi. Sorry, I'm not very familiar with the Zoom app, so it took me a minute to unmute. And I'm just I just joined like maybe 20 minutes ago because I was working, so I'm in my car. But I've already just been loving everything that I've been hearing. Just everything is so fascinating and beautiful. And I really would like to thank Brandon for inviting me. So yeah, my name is Sam Brubel, and I am primarily a paper cutting artist. I actually do a Polish paper cutting folk art that I started learning when I was a kid, that was passed down to me from a community member. So that's how I can connect with cultural memory. It's called Wycinanki, and it comes from Poland. And I've done a lot of different things in my life. I'm originally from the Chicago area. I now live in Lafayette, Louisiana, and have particularly started paper cutting again since I've been here. And I really love using a lot of the native animals and plants, depicting them in my paper cuttings, as what people were doing in Poland was depicting a lot of their folk traditions and creatures and plants in their area. So I like to bring it to wherever I'm living. And Louisiana has such a fascinating ecosystem and just so many beautiful and inspiring animals and plants that I depict in my art. I've done some activism, particularly around water protection. I was in Standing Rock in 2016 when the camp was like 10 people, and one of the craziest things in my life was seeing that expand to over 10,000 people as we were fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline up there. And that really started connecting sort of the political element for me with everything that I do with art. And I don't have a scientific background, but I definitely have an interest in the natural world and biological systems. So I'm really excited to be here and hear everything that y'all are talking about and see what is created.
Sam, thank thank you. I'm going to drop your a link to your website into the chat. But Timothy, I wonder if you would like to say a few words.
Yeah, just briefly, I just appreciate the invite, Brandon. Yeah, it was a great event, and definitely the morning was rainful, but I think that maybe livened things up. I've been a couple of times to your place out there, and that was maybe the most lively I've seen it in terms of wildlife. And I know we saw several frogs and different things, and there were mushrooms all over in the forest. It was very, very much, I think the rain kind of brought some of that enchantment that was the theme of the Halloween festival. So anyway, despite the rain and perhaps less people showed up, but I think those who did quite enjoyed it. And yeah, enjoyed making, we made small terrariums that we had some jars from the Setkiss fish collection, some old antique easy seal jars, and yeah, made some great little enclosed bioactive terrariums with kids, and tried to use it as a point to talk about sustainability and just also the need to connect with nature. For me, we have some in our house, and I have one on my desk that I'm looking at right now. It's just a reminder to me of like the connectivity we have with nature. And as you know, as we've been talking about memory, it's just a way for me to remember I need to, it's very easy for me to sit and work on my computer and writing papers, reading papers, blah, 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 but remind me to get in nature. So glad to hear it. Yeah, some of the kids remember that. I think, yeah, it was fun for both kids and adults. I think was a fun activity. So appreciate the invite and looking forward to next year's event, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Do you go by Tim or Timothy?
Tim, yeah, Tim's fine.
Tim, okay. Great to have you here. Anyone else? Harry, you've got your arm up, or your hand up, brother.
Yeah, I can leave my
Your
arm.
virtual hand.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see all of those who I know and have the pleasure of knowing, and those who I don't. I'm Harry Alasko. I work for the Gulf Research Program, and I actually wanted to give you a sneak peek, maybe unauthorized, but since we're talking about involving children in this space, we finally got or are very close to brainstorming and soon launching next year a program to engage children directly. Again, it's very early stages, but if you have any either insights, interests, or thoughts overall and would like to connect about that, I would love to hear it. And I'm very excited that it was greenlit, and really looking forward to what we can do in the Gulf region. I'm based in Houston, and I know that that's an area that the Gulf Research Program specifically can do more and will do more in children engagement and hearing. That's the main goal of the program that I'm envisioning, hearing from the future of the Gulf. So that was the pitch for today, and some good news, and we're looking forward to engage with some of y'all in that venture. I'm putting my email in the chat.
Harry, thanks for sharing some of the stuff that the Gulf Research Program is doing. And if there's anything that we can do to help you connect with our larger group, not just those who are here, of course, I'm there. Harry knows I'm always game to connecting artists and scientists, no matter what age. So great. All right. Well, Brandon, maybe we should start wrapping this up if nobody else I see.
I did want to ask Jody and Rebecca, not to put you all on the spot again, but the future of ocean memory. Like where I know right now it's kind of going through a transitional period. Maybe it's Ocean Memory 2.0 or something, but there was a meeting this past weekend. I don't know if I had to leave a little early, if what the next stages are there plans to meet again, or and maybe how some of us can get involved.
We do have a subgroup of us who are planning to meet again. I believe it's November 20th, to strategize about other sources of funding that would the central structure moving forward. The way we've worked in the past is that we had a central structure funded by NACV, And so that was great. And we used most of the money, however, to support seed projects. So we would give 5 to 10K to a given art science project, and then that project would get started, and they would find additional funds to keep that project, to make that project fully happen. And I didn't take time to give you examples of those, but we have lots of examples of those. One of them in the Louisiana area, Houston area too, is Lisa D'Amour's work with her playwriting. That was seeded by Ocean Memory, though she's expanded it in lots of different directions, you know. And Rebecca and others had together had a project that was seeded, and they found additional funds for an exhibit at the National Academies building called Blue Dream. To see, I don't know if there's a link to provide for that one, on a huge panoramic screen, like the whole history of the ocean flashing before you. So going forward, I'm just speaking for myself, but I see that we need to find a way forward for a sort of central structure, but that may take a while. And in the meantime, we have lots of people generating ideas to keep their seed projects going, and we have started some new seed projects. So that's a long-winded answer to say that we don't have a determined future right now, but we have a lot of people working and dedicated, and I'm totally convinced, I have no doubt about our going forward and expanding and doing more stuff. But you know, when you're spoiled by having a grant for 5, 6 years, and then all of a sudden that's done. In the science world, you might think of it like, okay, I've had this project, 3 to 5 year project, I've done what I'm supposed to do, and now it's over. With the Ocean Memory Project, it's not over. It's never over. It goes and goes and goes because there's so many angles to ocean memory. So our future is yet to be determined in concrete terms, but we're going forward. And mainly we need to find a way to expand and bring in more people.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think so. Yeah, I think the structure of the organization is in question right now. We're, you know, but at the moment, oh wait, Kathy, did you? I see you. Okay. Just to add very quickly that in addition to providing seed grants, one of the things that we've identified as really being, you know, just essential to this project is the opportunity for in-person gatherings. And so we're meeting on the 20th to talk about a way to find funding for a hopefully yearly, you know, in-person gathering. And then in addition, these seed grants to fund these interdisciplinary collaborations. And in terms of to address your question about how to become part of it, we don't have a system in place at the moment. But I would say that if you know anybody that might be interested, or if you're, you know, you know, have them connect with any of us that are part of the project, you know, and we're, you know, we're always interested in bringing new voices into the project. So Jody, do you know if there's like a way to onboard people to?
There isn't a formal way, but the way that it works is organic. If you know someone, let them know. And so the next time that we have an event that we can advertise, it will be sent to everybody whose email we have at that time, and then you can share it. So I can't tell you what the next event will be because we don't have it planned yet. But when it happens, it will be a shared thing and you can share it.
Yeah, it's always been, you know, kind of word of mouth and people who know people who might fit into the project really well. So.
Kathy, do you have a comment or something to add?
Sorry, I was just going to say really quickly, there is also a project that I'm working on with another Ocean Memory project member, Max Marsalis, called Descent and Transformation. It was actually born out of the original seed grant that we got back in 2021. And it's going to take place at Fulcrum Arts in Pasadena. We don't have an exact date yet, but it will be most likely later in 2026.
Great.
So, yeah, one of the things I said, which I really believe at the last meeting we had in person, was that the Ocean Memory Project definitely lives on in the collaborations between members. It's a very sort of fluid, but definitely strong flow there.
I would also add, I think of the Ocean Memory Project as basically two things. One, that everybody has very clearly indicated this collaborative of different projects that have kind of grown out organically. But the sort of subtext is that it is a framework of inquiry. I mean, think about listen to all of the different ways. A simple question, elegant question of inquiry. Does the ocean have a memory? All the different examples of people in the room that either have been working that or are being inspired by that. I mean, it's a framework. So it's, that framework can be brought into our work at the Gulf within this network. It's no accident that I've invited a lot of ocean memory people into the sanctum here, and thank you all for continuing to come back and visit all the time. But there is an overlap. I mean, the Gulf region is not concerned only with the Gulf. The Ocean Memory Project's not concerned only with the Gulf, but as we've heard, we're all connected to the water, and in this this case, so there's definitely aside from just the logistics of it, the way that we think, the way that we come together, is very much inspired. Like I said, I mean, it wasn't just trying to flatter Jody. Truly, the way that I think and the way that I conceptualize things at the Academy is so influenced by the way that NACP brought people together, and the way that Ocean Memory continues to do that in different iterations. So I think, okay, formal structure, okay, that's in question. The spirit of this, the level of inquiry is infectious, and it has spread, unlike the coronavirus, in a good way. So thank you for being infectious with us. I just want to give anybody else, I'm just double checking to make sure we don't see hands up. Absolutely. Stephen.
Yeah, I'll just talk very briefly, introduce myself again. It's been a few months since I was able to attend one of these. I'm a composer and installation artist in New Orleans, and one of the project that I'm about to start working on is the third entry in a series on how human activities are impacting the natural world, and really enjoyed this conversation. The first work in the series is actually all about noise pollution in our oceans, and how those are affecting marine life and the various ways that those populations are adapting. And then the second one actually just had its premiere this past May here in New Orleans. It was premiered by a local contemporary music ensemble, and I'm about to begin work on the third, and it's I'm going to be at a residency in Virginia in December to really dive into that piece, and so just very excited about that. So just thank you for the presentation on the ocean memory. It's been fascinating. It's been, I think, really aligned with my interests, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, anybody else? Anyone else?
I would just say in response to what JD was saying, that I think one of the most important things we have learned in the Ocean Memory Project is to bring as many different voices into the room as possible. If you don't have, and really expand, bring in people that you would never imagine bringing in, because it has a huge impact on how you think. And once you have established a community that welcomes anybody into it, then it's a fabulous place to create.
Thank you.
I'll just add quickly. First of all, thank you so much, everybody, for being on this. And JD, you're like the Wizard of Oz back there, connecting everybody through the chat. I look forward to going through all those links. But Rebecca and Jody, I will contact you separately about the project. I'm very interested in it. I just completed a video called Waterscapes that's showing at the Venice Biennale of Architecture right now through funding from Ombretta, who had to leave earlier. So I look forward to learning more about the ocean memory and hearing what 2.0 might be for you all on that.
Can you share a link of your project? That sounds amazing.
Sure, I can. I'm a little sleepy today, but yes, I look forward to getting that in the chat for you. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, thanks, JD.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop recording, but we'll stay in the room for just a little bit longer, especially while Deborah's working on getting the chat.